people starting to file in, but we're going to go ahead and get started so we can stay on track. I'm Kim Christ. I'm the director of SC Tech and CyberSec SC. We're hosting the conference today. Really appreciate you all being here. We have some fabulous speakers this morning. And just to kind of kick off, I want to say a thank you to our sponsors, Checkpoint, Teneo, AWS, Sotera, DartPoints, and Blue Cross and Blue Shield. We will have a series of legal tech speakers in this room this morning. Very exciting stuff. It's going to be a fast-paced day. 20-minute sessions go by very quickly, but I think that you'll find they're going to be fun, interactive, and very much informative. So without further ado, we're going to kick off Ballroom B. Callie Price will introduce our speakers this morning. Thank you, Callie.
No problem. Thank you, Kim, and I'll be super brief. We've got Rachel coming up to talk to us about deepfakes. She'll be right behind me, but first off, just a reminder to download the Whova app if you have not done so. You'll see QR codes throughout, so really easy, but find one of us if you need any assistance with that. Be sure to enter the exhibitor passport contest. You'll be able to pick up your passport stamps through the app, and then you'll be entered for a giveaway later in the day. So be sure to do that. And then there are other ways to earn prizes or win prizes through engagement with the app as well. So check that out. And then if you are attending for CLE credit, there's a sign-in sheet at the main registration table. I will be announcing you'll shift after a few sessions to Ballroom A to complete that credit if you would like. So I'll give a heads up when that happens so you can shift over and get that credit. CLE materials are available at the table, and they will also be uploaded to Whova. But first off, to kick us off, we have Rachel Anna and why deepfakes are dangerous and how we can mitigate their harm. So Rachel, thank you.
Does this work? Okay, good. And this clicker, is this will, okay. Thank you. Good morning. All right. I thought we would start off with just a quick introduction here. So let's see if I can get this to. Oh.
I am not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality? Is it the ability to capture, process, and make sense of the information our senses receive? If you can see, hear, taste, or smell something, does that make it real? Or is it simply the ability to feel? I would like to welcome you to the era of synthetic reality. Now, what do you see?
Good morning. By the way, I'm not a hologram. It's just me. I'm here real in the flesh. When I talk about deepfakes today, I'm going to be talking about videos like the one we just saw, and images and audio where the likeness of someone is replaced with the likeness of somebody else or the voice of somebody else.
I am not.
And the way these deepfakes are usually created is through machine learning, deep learning, One of these techniques is called a generative adversarial network, or a GAN. And the way the GANs work is that you take, let's say, picture images, you're putting them into the GAN, and the generator is trying to fool the discriminator, and the discriminator is trying to detect the fake. And this is it's like a feedback loop, and it's working. And when you're trying to create a video like the Morgan Freeman video, you probably need a lot of images, and you probably need a fair amount of audio, probably hours of audio to get something that looks that realistic, right? But today, this technology is evolving so fast that you can take a single image and you can create a deepfake. You can go to the App Store right now, you can download dozens of apps that can allow you to create your own deepfakes. You can go to YouTube and Google, and you can find a step-by-step instruction manual of how to create a deepfake. So this technology is easily accessible today. You don't need to have a Hollywood budget. You don't need expensive specialized equipment. You don't need to be a technologist or a computer scientist to know how to create these. So manipulated media isn't something that's entirely new. We have had Photoshop since about 1990, which many of you may be familiar with. In fact, 1990 was about the same time that Tim Berners-Lee was developing the World Wide Web. And a few things have happened since 1990, right? Today, the number of people that have access to the internet is about 63% of the world's population. 83% of people have an access to a smartphone. There are 1 billion people that are monthly users of Instagram, 3 billion people that are monthly users of Facebook, and then you have a whole bunch of people that use Twitter. So the fact that you have this technology that you can create these deepfakes, it's a little bit different than 1990, right? You can take that technology and you can easily disseminate it into the masses in a matter of minutes to a global audience. So there's more, right? It turns out us as human beings aren't very good at detecting deepfakes. In fact, we can be sometimes really bad at it. There's a number of studies that show this. And even worse, we think we're okay at it. We think that we have this false sense of security because we think that we are better than we are. In this study in particular, they tried to add like financial incentives, they tried to create some awareness, and it really didn't improve people's ability to detect the deepfakes. So you have this technology, it's easy to create, it's easy to disseminate, and it's easy to fool the human eye, and you put it in the hands of bad actors. And that's not really a good recipe, right? Most of the deepfakes that are out there today are they're videos of pornographic videos, non-consensual, that are directed at women, females, from celebrities to children. It's a really big problem. And when these videos get out there, they inflict dignitary harm, they ruin reputations, and often before you can expose the fact that the videos are real. Politics is another area of concern. Obviously, the ability to take a video and attribute it to a political candidate, saying something they didn't say, doing something inappropriate, that's a powerful and dangerous tool. National security is another area. Again, to create a fake video with inflammatory content, you can incite violence, recruit terrorists, disrupt diplomatic ties. And we saw this, right? We saw this earlier this year. Shortly after Russia invaded Ukraine, there was a very realistic deepfake video of President Zelensky telling his people, telling Ukrainians to lay down their arms. So that's a very dangerous tool. I expect that we're going to see this more in litigation. So there has been a child custody case where one of the parents tried to, they created a deepfake audio of the other parent making violent threats and saying things inappropriate to use in their custody case. Fortunately, the lawyer for the other parent was able to forensically show that it was fake evidence. But I think that this is going to be an issue that we're going to see in litigation. It's going to put more on the attorneys to authenticate evidence, to get it in, and there's going to be more placed on the courts, the judges, to make sure that they really do their gatekeeping role. But the other thing it does for politics and litigation in particular is it creates this environment where people start distrusting what's out there. And so a wrongdoer can say, oh, that video, even if it's real, he can say it's fake, right? And we've seen some of this in politics already. But this concept is called the liar's dividend. And people start to have a lack of trust in the system. And then maybe why many of you are here today is the potential impact to organizations. So there have been a couple of FBI warnings in the last few years about how deepfakes may impact organizations. In 2019, the CEO of an energy company thought he was talking to an executive at his parent company, and he said, the boss had the same accent, sounded just the same. He was duped into sending 220,000 euros in this fake scam. And there was a similar incident just last year in Hong Kong. A bank manager, he thought he was talking to the director of a company that he worked with all the time. And he ended up being duped into sending $35 million. He was told, they were doing a transfer for a transaction. He had a lawyer email him. He told him all this, and the lawyer emailed him. I mean, it was a fairly sophisticated scheme, but it worked. And there was another incident just recently where the dad here in the U.S., he received a call. It was from his son. His son was distressed. He'd been in an accident. He hit a pregnant woman, and he had been arrested. He needed bond money. And fortunately, the dad was able to get in touch with his son before he made that transfer. But he said, the voice sounded just like my son. The cadence was the same. These types of things are out there. And I think we don't even have a sense yet for how prevalent they are because, there's no reporting requirement. But there was a cybersecurity company last year that said they had 17 companies that they had worked with that had paid an average of $175,000 per incident. So they're definitely happening. The Federal Trade Commission has been interested in this area. They've conducted some workshops. They're trying to raise awareness. Consumers are being scammed by these deepfakes. So it's probably happening more than we think it is. And you see, it's not just FBI, but other agencies are looking into this. And then the most recent warning that I've seen was earlier this year from the FBI, warning about deepfakes being used in interview process, particularly for IT jobs. This is pretty scary too. So, the world is not the same in 2022 as it was in 2019. A lot of people work remote now. Sometimes, the interview process it can be entirely remote. And it's the idea of somebody being able to get a job and that's a cyber criminal in the IT department of a large organization is pretty scary. Just last week, or in the last couple weeks, I saw that an executive at a crypto company, he received messages thanking him for meetings that he never attended, and he has been looking into this, and he thinks what happens is that there were deepfakes of him in video conferences of people impersonating him, and he didn't attend those meetings. So we live in a new environment, 2022. It's just something that we all need to be aware of. So I'm just curious, how many people think that we have less than 5 states or less have laws that regulate deepfakes? How many think we have more than 5? So we actually have 4, right? So California and Texas, they have laws that regulate the use of deepfakes for elections. California and Virginia actually have revenge porn statutes, and they have extended those to make sure that they cover deepfakes. New York has banned non-consensual pornographic deepfakes. They've also extended their right of publicity statute to make sure they cover artists whose likeness is used in the deepfakes. But we don't have many laws. There's a few reasons for that. One is that we have First Amendment rights, and they protect video and audio content that is created. It's a form of expression, and there's dangers with carving out exceptions to that, and so it makes it really hard to have good regulations that might be able to counter some of the threats of deepfakes. And there are a lot of beneficial uses. It's being used a lot in the arts. You see these living portraits. Mona Lisa comes to life. There's an exhibit down in Florida of Salvador Dali, and he interacts with the visitors in the museum. So this creates, just a more engaging, personalized experience. When you go to a museum, he's taking a selfie with people who are there. Most of the time, we're seeing deepfakes for beneficial uses is in education, and especially in history. There's a museum in Illinois that has hologrammatic interviews from Holocaust survivors. There's a CBS episode about this on 60 Minutes episode. It's really interesting. Encourage you to check it out. But just think about middle school students going in to this museum and having these conversations with Holocaust survivors. It's very cool. And also a way to preserve their legacy, long after they're not here. So that's pretty interesting. And then we see, deepfakes used in movies a fair amount today now. So there's a lot of good that we have to manage in addition to some of the threats. And because we don't have a lot of laws that regulate deepfakes, we're really reliant on technology. Fortunately, there's been a number of initiatives from businesses, from government, from academia, working together to try to develop technology that will detect deepfakes. I think Facebook and Michigan State have an initiative. Microsoft has come out with a video authenticator tool. The federal government actually had a deepfake prize competition just to promote and encourage research into this area, collaboration, and try to figure out how we're going to try to mitigate some of the harm that comes from deepfakes. And then social media platforms, they play a big role here, and it's hard to tell where they're going to go. Some social media companies have taken a position they're going to try to ban deepfakes. Others, they're not required to regulate them by law, so they may not. Should social media companies have to make people authenticate what they upload? That's one of the conversations that's being had, but it's still to be determined. So what do we do about this if we don't have laws? The technology is sort of evolving in order to protect ourselves and also to protect our organizations. And come back. Whoops. Oh. Sorry. Well, I lost my place here, so I'll just keep going. One of the things that we can do is just be really careful about what we are sharing with other people. So that's a personal choice. It's a personal choice about what you share, right? But you just need to be thinking about what you're putting out there into the public audience. I was going to show you a slide, maybe. Oh, it's not there anymore. Okay, it was in a different deck. I was going to show you a slide of what not to put on LinkedIn, which is identifying people in your IT department, giving out too much information about your organization. Those are just things that you just need to be mindful of, because they can be used by people to take advantage of unsuspecting employees in a situation. The other thing is I know I said that we're not very good at detecting deepfakes, but you still can be looking out for things. There are visual cues. You need to be alert and aware. When you're looking at images, don't assume it's real. And there are, if there's unnatural blinking, unnatural facial expressions, weird lighting, robotic sounding noises, the cadence doesn't seem right. All of those things can help alert you to the fact that the video or the image might not be real. So you want to incorporate that into your training program. And that's the biggest takeaway here is that if you have a training security program, incorporate deepfake detection into that, and how do you respond? And some of the same things we do with business email compromise and phishing, those types of things, it's sort of the same idea. So if somebody in your company receives a call from a senior level executive, they're not used to receiving such a call, maybe they need to be on alert. If they receive a call from a government agency or from the IT department and nothing's wrong with their computer, they need to be careful. What are they sharing? Don't give out socials, don't give out credit card information. Don't give out sensitive company information. Don't reveal any of your reporting relationships with your company if they're asked about it. Again, if they, just like phishing, if they try to create this false sense of urgency, that's something that you need to be looking out for. And then, having a policy in place. What, employee encounters something, what do they do? Who do they call? Who do they report to? Make sure it's incorporated into your incident response planning. And, does your insurance policy address these things? Some of the similar steps you should take, like you do just for your overall cybersecurity training and awareness program. And sorry about the slide issue, but that's all I have, and I think I'm out of time.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And we'll try to get that slide that was missing uploaded and sent out to everyone. Thank you. That was awesome. And I promise I'm not thinking of creating a deep fake for next week's Zoom calls. Next up, we have David Condon, Cyber Liability 2.0, Now What? Trends in Insurance and Risk Management. One quick second, one announcement. You can, if you have not picked up your ID badge, you can do that at any time. Again, download the Hoover app, and David, feel free to take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Callie. Good morning, everybody. Glad to be here. Glad y'all are here. I want to thank the sponsors, the Council on Competitiveness, and in particular for their help, Adrian, Callie, Kim, and Susie, of course, and Matt and Caleb for getting us all mic'd up and everything with this. Cyber 2.0. Let me frame the perspective of where we are. Why 2.0? Bookends. First is the first generation of insurance claims started rolling in the 90s, and those policies were written on old traditional commercial insurance framework. So the liability and the property claims for loss of business income and restoring data and third-party data compromise, it was a square peg, round hole kind of situation. 2.0, and that's just my term. I don't know that there's any meaning in the industry out there, but 2.0 is my way of saying, okay, we are now in an environment where the insurance sector is writing dedicated cyber insurance coverages, both standalone and supplemental policies. There's a lot changing, and it is very unstable, but that's where we are. So that's one bookend. The other is a risk management concept that is fundamental and very often overlooked. And that is this principle. You can do everything right and still get it wrong. That sounds trite, but let me ask you this. Did you know that in Major League Baseball, 6 teams have thrown no-hitters and lost the game? One of them is this season. So we're not talking about way back in ancient history. You can do everything right and still get it wrong. Did you know that when the Titanic left Southampton, it was carrying 25% more lifeboats than maritime regulation required? In today's language, we might say they were 125% to code. Sounds like a best practice. Didn't work out so well for 1,500 souls that perished. You can do everything right and still get it wrong. Think about all of the resources, the money, the capital, the time, the labor that we invest in software, programs, endpoint detection, all of the things to create a defense perimeter for data protection, employee awareness training. All of those things are good, they're important, and they're not anywhere close to what we need to be doing, at least from a risk management standpoint, and certainly from how the insurance carriers look at it, because, did you know, 4 out of 5 attempted hacks in the US today are based on social engineering. And that, you know, that's the industry term for any attempt to manipulate or deceive people. Some of the examples that Rachel was just talking about. So think about it. For all of the stuff that we do to try and create a safe, secured environment, if the bad guys are focusing 80% of their effort on manipulation and getting people to click on stuff and to respond to emails and to send funds that they shouldn't be, and they're trained not to, that tells us we may be doing it right and still getting it wrong, okay? That's the context of where we are in terms of the big picture. I got a treat for you. We're going to start with dessert. We're going to jump straight to the takeaways and then walk through and unpack a few of the bits and pieces. We're on such a quick schedule here this morning. So the big one is there is a very robust industry writing cyber insurance today. It is financially sound. There's a lot of business out there. And if you've got those policies with well-rated companies, you're fine. They've got the resources to cover you, okay? That's good. But here comes the but. Rates are going up, and they're not going back down anytime soon. We're going to look at a little bit of why here in just a second. Partially because claims are going up, both the numbers and the costs of them. It's becoming increasingly harder in the insurance side, the back office, the actuarials, the underwriters, to try and figure out where the pricing should be. And it's because they're dealing with the same problem we all are. What's the risk? How do we quantify it? How broad is it, and how much could it hurt if something happened? Well, how do you put a premium on that? And oh, by the way, we want to write a policy with coverages that people want to buy at a price that they're willing to pay compared to the rest of the market, that we can still make a profit at the end of the day so we don't go out of business. And if anything is increasing exponentially more than all these other things, it's uncertainty. And the worst thing for insurance folks is uncertainty. They can't plan for it. It doesn't fit their calculator models, so they're having a hard time with all of those sort of things. What that means are a couple of things. Last two. Scrutiny. Underwriting is going to look at what you do a lot more closely with a lot more rigor. And make note of this, especially for renewals, not just new applicants. You have to assume that if you've never had insurance before, it's going to be a longer process. The problem now is for underwriters, because this landscape is changing, the threats are always evolving, they're under the gun to look at it and say, okay, Callie, we need you to provide just as much information now as you did last year to renew the policy, because we want to know that you've kept up with everything. Or there are new threats. Is there a hole in your perimeter defense? Have you repaired that? Or are you ready for the next attack? So they're going to have to go through all those things. The good in that, on the consumer side, policyholders and businesses, is by going through that exercise, we identify our weaknesses, we come up with a plan for how to address those. So at the end of the day, risk management being what it is, we've accomplished two very important things. Well, three, really. One is we have strengthen the overall quality of our cyber defense. And that's what we're really after in this context. By doing so, you're going to access what are the relatively best rates in the market right now. And that also gives you leverage in a competitive marketplace, because you can work your brand image off of being trustworthy. You have my important data. I want you to protect my information. And you're able to say, we can because we have gone through this. We've rolled our sleeves up and gotten into it. Okay, so let's unpack a few of those. That really kind of captures the whole thing. The rest of these, the remainder of dessert is going to be a few bits and pieces of trends in some of these individual areas. I said that rates are going up. If you add together the supplemental and the standalone for 21 alone, in the U.S., the aggregate premium is somewhere between $8 and $10 billion. And remember I said renewals? This is why it's so important, because the folks who are already across the bridge and know how big a deal this is, renewals went up 34% in the fourth quarter last year alone. The projection, just a little more than 2 years from now, by the end of 25, is that those premiums are going to more than double to $25 billion. So that's why I say they're going up, and they're not coming back down anytime in the foreseeable future. They may never, okay? Claims are increasing, and I put in this first bullet, I put these in quotations for two reasons. Considerable is what the industry uses to describe the risk and the difficulty in quantifying it. And that ought to send a cold shiver to anybody in risk management, you know? That's a serious thing among serious people. And then with tongue firmly planted in cheek, I also use quotation marks around strong premium growth. You know, that's a great inside business kind of term for we raised our rates. We increased our income because we're charging more. So it's justifiable, but it's a nice little euphemism for we jacked your premiums up, okay? But at the same time, the costs went up. Look, in 2018, the cost of cyber claims rose 300%, and that's before the pandemic kicked in. I've got a cute little chart to show you here at the bottom. The good news from a free market standpoint is while the rates are going up, which hurts our, you know, that's an expense, so that's painful for us as consumers. Even though they're having a hard time trying to figure out the right pricing, they have raised the rate sufficient to cover the increased losses, both the numbers and the cost of claims, so much so that last year, the loss ratio across the cyber insurance sector went down from 72% to 65%. That loss ratio is just the insurance term for how much money we have left over after we take premium as revenue coming in, our overhead expenses to handle claims, pay out losses, settlements, judgments, and cover all of the other things that go with a lot of the things Rachel talked about, the crisis response, reporting, regulatory fines, and all of those sort of things. The chart here, and all of this is on the website, so if you go download it. I told Callie I violated one of the tenets of PowerPoints and put more information on here than you normally would, but I wanted this to be more of a leave behind so you have a quick reference to look back. If you look at those numbers, this is from Chubb, which maintains a really good data index on a lot of these cyber incidents. They use 2012 as a baseline, and you can see the numbers jumped 100% the first year, half again the second year, a third again the next year, and all of this is before COVID hit. So it spiked, it's tapering off a little bit, but the claim numbers are still way up over what they had been. Good example, Tokyo Marine, one of the largest carriers in the world, handles 2,000 cyber claims a year. Now you think about how many insurance policy holders never file a claim? 2,000 a year. And what I thought was really interesting, their chief underwriting officer said, half of those are from healthcare. That doesn't really come as a surprise. But what I thought really was worth paying attention to, he said half of them come from small to medium-sized businesses and what they call Main Street, not Wall Street. So that's all of us in this room. That's who's doing this thing. Now, let's do, I thought we'd do a quick kind of a game show sort of a thing. IBM does some benchmark studies. The most recent one on data breach came out earlier this spring. So I want to see what y'all think. I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to just clap your hands if you say higher or lower. If I buy Callie a putter and tell you I spent 80 bucks on it, do you think I spent more? Say higher, clap your hands. If I spent less, clap your hands, okay? So the first question is, the average cost of a data breach today, do you think it's higher or lower than $4 million per breach? Higher than $4 million? Lower? Okay, higher. Well, 4.35. Now remember that number, because we're going to see that again. How about a ransomware attack? That's different. The cost of a ransomware attack, higher or lower than $4.5 million? You think it's higher? Lower? Kind of even there. It's right at 54 million. But look at that last little note. That doesn't include the ransom. And a lot of those get paid. Municipalities, we've seen a lot of problems in that area. All right. How many of these organizations, oh, by the way, just this IBM study, they interviewed 3,500 people from 500 companies, in 17 different industries. So that's a pretty good cross-section. Of that group, how many do you think had more than one cyber breach? Of folks who experienced a cyber breach, was it more or less than 48%? Higher than 48? Lower than 48? No, come on, you got to clap one or the other. Higher, 48, or lower? No, most people think higher. You're right, 83%. Now, think about what that means. And these people are the ones who already have been through it. They know what's going on, and they're seeing it more than once. Now, a couple of these are really relevant in the supply chain. So in the context of our conference here today, breaches that are cloud-based, more or less than half, 50%. Who thinks higher? Who thinks less? No? 45%. There we go. This one is the one that's going to have you awake at 2 in the morning, cold sweats. What percent of breaches that were identified didn't start with us, but came in through one of our business partners? You think it was higher or lower than 15%? Higher? Lower? Yeah, you're right. It was 19%. 1 in 5. That's going to be the tail to wag the dog going forward. How about passing on prices? Are you going to raise them? You think 3/4 of the people raised their prices or more? Higher? No? Less? No? 60% did. Now, the good news in all of this, there's 2 critical things you can do. You can have an incident response team, and you can test regularly. If you do those things, do you know how much that saved on the average cost? Remember, the average is $4.35 million per breach. If you have an incident response team and you regularly test all of your stress points, do you think you saved more or less than $1.5 million? Higher? Lower? Kind of in between. $2.66 million. So think about the 4.35 and the folks who don't have those things, how much their cost of a breach was, okay? You're familiar with all of these security protocols. These are the things that underwriters are going to be taking a stronger look at. And again, all of this will be on the app. so you can download these after the conference. But look at the bottom one. Remember I said, third party, vendors and partners. There's your Trojan horse. That ought to keep you awake at night if nothing else does, because you don't have a control over what they do. What you have control over is your scrutiny and knowing how much you can trust them. And remember, right now, 1 in 5 breaches are coming in through that Trojan horse. All right? Whoop. A trend just to keep an eye on. There were amendments to the National Defense Authorization Act added in the Senate earlier this year that would have created an office in Homeland Security to collect data on cyber incidents. The insurance lobby in D.C. pushed back and got the amendments taken out in the House. But the Defense Authorization Act is a big piece of legislation that usually gets through partisanship issues aside year after year. So that may still come back around. Keep an eye on it. The pros and cons on the pro side, the folks pushing this wanted a central clearinghouse to gather information, to digest it, and to share it for policy-making purposes on the government side and to work with the private sector. So in concert with each other, better techniques and defenses could be coordinated. On the private side, the pushback from the business interest of the insurance industry, it was, hey, this is an expense. We're not doing it right now, and you're basically hoisting this on us, coming out of our pocket. We could have some issues with contract relations with our clients, and what they're really worried about is getting on a slippery slope to more mandatory reporting. Keep an eye on it. That's it. Again, rates are going to go up. You're going to have to roll your sleeves up. It's about content and substance, not form. But if you do those things, you're going to be in the best position to get the best rates that are out there, strengthen your defense, and be able to market yourself based on an image that's founded on trustworthiness.